I had never believed in ghost stories. For the first 27 years of my life, I always thought supernatural tales were just imagination or simple misunderstandings. But my experience last fall in the remote Appalachian Mountains of West Virginia changed everything. It all began when I decided to take a break from my stressful job in New York City. As a freelance journalist, I felt I needed some time to clear my mind. My friend Jake offered his family's cabin deep in the Appalachian woods for me to use for a few weeks. "You'll love it," Jake said. "Quiet, peaceful, perfect for writing. No neighbors for 5 miles, just you and nature." Quiet and peaceful sounded perfect. I arrived at the cabin in the late afternoon. It was a simple yet cozy 2-story wooden house, surrounded by maple and oak trees whose leaves were starting to change color. The first night passed uneventfully. I slept soundly to the sound of crickets and the gentle wind rustling through the trees. On the second day, I started working on an article I had been postponing. Everything felt so perfect. Until the third night. I woke up around 2 a.m. to a soft knocking sound. At first, I thought it was just a tree branch tapping against the window, but the knocking had a rhythmic pattern. I turned on the light and checked the entire cabin. No sign of anyone. When I returned to bed, the knocking stopped. The next day, I explored the area around the cabin. There were no signs of other people. After walking for about an hour, I found a small, unmapped trail. Driven by curiosity, I followed it and discovered the remnants of a stone foundation, what seemed to be the ruins of a house that had burned down years ago. Among the rubble lay an old fabric doll. Half its face was charred. The other half stared at me with intact black button eyes. For some reason, the sight made my skin crawl. I decided to return to the cabin. That night, the knocking returned, louder this time. I mustered the courage to look out the window and could swear I saw a small figure among the trees, just for a moment before it vanished into the darkness. I barely slept that night. The next morning, I called Jake. "Hey, has anything ever happened at your cabin?" I asked cautiously. "Like what?" Jake responded. "I don't know. Any local stories about this area or the cabin?" Jake was silent for a moment. "Why are you asking?" I told him about the knocking and the figure I saw. "Listen," Jake finally said. "There was a big fire about 30 years ago in that area. A family died, parents and a little girl. They say the father started the fire intentionally. My grandfather bought the land years later and built the cabin far from the original house site." My heart sank. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Come on, it's just an old story. Nobody believes in ghosts out there." That night, I decided to record the sounds with my phone, leaving it on the bedside table. When I woke up to the louder knocking, I glimpsed a small child at the foot of my bed, only for a second before she disappeared. With trembling hands, I checked the recording. Mostly just wind and creaking wood, but there was one chilling moment. A child's whisper.
"Help! He's coming again tonight."
I immediately packed my things and drove through the night back to New York. To this day, I have never listened to that recording again. Jake asked why I returned so suddenly, but I couldn't tell him the truth. Weeks later, out of curiosity, I researched the fire. A 1993 local newspaper article described the Mason family tragedy. A father allegedly murdered his wife before setting the house ablaze with himself and their 8-year-old daughter Abigail inside. In the accompanying photo, Abigail held a tattered fabric doll with black button eyes. The same doll I found in the ruins. But that wasn't the end. The terror followed me back to New York. A week after my return, I started hearing the same knocking at my apartment window, on the 17th floor. At first, I thought it was my traumatized imagination, but the knocking persisted, always at 2 a.m. One night, I woke up feeling an eerie coldness despite the heater working fine. In the corner of my room, I saw her, the little girl with a scorched nightgown. Half her face burned, staring straight at me with those same button eyes.
He follows me. Now he follows you.
In a blink, she vanished. But where she had stood, ashes and charred marks remained on the carpet. I touched them. They were still warm. The following nights were a nightmare. I smelled smoke without any source. Items in my apartment moved on their own. Once I found the fabric doll under my pillow, the exact one from the ruins, even though I was sure I had never brought it with me. At its worst, I woke up one night gasping for air. Something heavy pressed on my chest, rough fingers clutching my throat. I couldn't see anything but smelled alcohol and smoke, the same details mentioned about Mr. Mason in the newspaper article. Desperate, I sought out a medium. The middle-aged woman turned pale as I recounted my experience. "You brought two souls with you," she said. "The girl isn't haunting you, she's warning you. It's her father who's following you. He doesn't want you uncovering what happened." The medium gave me a cleansing ritual to perform, but before I could attempt it, I had a vivid dream. In it, I was inside the burning Mason home. Little Abigail pulled me to a spot under the floorboards, a box containing letters and a diary documenting years of abuse by her father.
He doesn't want this found, but you can stop him. Go back. Find the evidence.
Abigail whispered. After weeks of living in terror, losing weight, unable to work, nearly insane from sleep deprivation, I decided to return to the cabin. Jake thought I had lost my mind, but gave me the keys again. I returned to the Mason ruins and dug at the spot Abigail had shown me. 3 feet down, I found a metal box containing the evidence: letters, the mother's diary, and insurance documents in the wife and daughter's names. I turned everything over to the local sheriff. At first skeptical, they reopened the case. The new investigation concluded that Mr. Mason had indeed committed premeditated murder, not an accident as previously believed. The night after the case was officially closed, I returned to the cabin one last time. At midnight, I awoke to see Abigail standing beside my bed, this time her face whole, her nightgown clean and unburnt. "Thank you," she whispered before fading away. The knocking stopped. The smell of smoke disappeared. The doll never reappeared. But to this day, every October 17th, the anniversary of the fire, I still wake up at exactly 2 a.m. And in the silence of my bedroom, I can hear a little girl's laughter, finally free. I thought the story ended there. Months passed without disturbance, and I started to feel normal again. But then Jake emailed me. "You need to see this," he wrote, attaching a 1978 local newspaper article. It told of a similar case, a house fire at the same location 15 years before the Mason tragedy. The Williams family, a husband, wife, and their 7-year-old daughter, Lily. Mr. Williams was suspected of setting the fire while drunk after a violent fight with his wife. My heart raced. How could two identical tragedies occur at the same spot? Clues came from Alice, the psychic I had consulted. "Something isn't finished," she said over the phone. "Abigail is free, but she wasn't the only victim." "You mean Lily Williams? The souls are tied to that land, bound by a darkness far older than them." That night, I had a different nightmare. Not flames, but overwhelming cold and darkness. In the dream, I walked through the woods to a hidden cave near the cabin. At the cave's mouth, I saw them. Abigail and another little girl, likely Lily.
He's still here. He whispered to our fathers. He sowed evil.
Lily said. I woke up in a cold sweat. The clock read 3:33 a.m. In the bathroom, I found words written on the mirror in what looked like blood. Cooper's Cave. Terror gripped my spine. Cooper's Cave wasn't fictional. It was a real cave near Jake's cabin. Trembling, I contacted a local historian I had once interviewed. He confirmed that Cooper's Cave had a dark past. In 1881, a man named Ezekiel Cooper allegedly performed occult rituals there, sacrificing his own daughter to what he called the Dweller in Darkness. Despite all I had endured, I knew I had to go back. This time, I told no one. I rented a car, took time off work, and returned to West Virginia with hiking gear and protection rituals Alice had taught me. Finding Cooper's Cave wasn't easy. It was hidden behind thick brush and almost invisible trails. After nearly 3 hours, I found the yawning mouth of the cave. Inside, the air felt heavy and wrong. The deeper I went, the stronger the sense of being watched. My flashlight revealed ancient carvings on the walls. At the cave's heart, I found a stone altar, weathered with time. That's when I felt it. A presence so overwhelming it made my knees buckle. The air turned freezing cold.
You should not be here.
A deep voice echoed inside my head, not out loud. A shadowy figure began to form, like a tear in the fabric of reality. I was frozen with fear. Suddenly, 2 small figures appeared beside me, Abigail and Lily, their eyes glowing faintly.
He whispered promises to our fathers. He needed the blood of children. He waited for thousands of years,
Abigail said. The black figure grew larger, hissing in anger. I felt its primordial rage. With shaking hands, I began the ritual, sprinkling holy salt in a circle, lighting candles at the 4 points, chanting in ancient Latin. Sweat dripped down my face as the entity tried to break through. Then, another figure emerged. A little girl in a Victorian dress, blood-stained, Sarah Cooper, Ezekiel's daughter.
He bound me to him. Destroy the altar. Free us all,
She rasped. Summoning my last strength, I grabbed my geology hammer and struck the altar. Blow after blow, the entity shrieked. At the 7th blow, cracks appeared. At the 10th, they widened. At the 13th strike, the altar shattered. An ear-splitting roar filled the cave. A violent wind surged, knocking me unconscious. When I awoke, the cave was silent. The altar was destroyed. Where it had stood, 3 wildflowers now bloomed, impossible in the darkness. Back in New York, I received a letter without a return address. Inside, a child's handwriting said, "Thank you for freeing us. He's gone. We are too." Signed, Abigail, Lily, and Sarah. I soon moved away, started a new life elsewhere, trying to forget. But every October 17th, I still receive 3 identical wildflowers at exactly 2 a.m. And on certain nights, I wake to the distant sound of children's laughter. A reminder that some horror stories can indeed have a happy ending.